What's wrong with the angle?
It's a bit large and then small.
You look phenomenal. It's the stripes. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, I think that was that a question or?
I'm just not
You're
sure if
saying
we're
hello.
on. You're just sitting
We're on.
up.
We're on. We're getting set. Okay. Here we are.
Here we are.
We are, we're gonna go into, so I put up a post last night,
Yeah.
and it was the first time that I ever posted, let me make sure I'm correct in that. Yep, I think it was the first time I ever posted a cool guy picture.
Which means what?
Multicam, sniper rifle, you know,
Like, right, so
doing
there's
special forces crap. And there's a reason I don't post that stuff.
Okay.
One of them is that pictures are very misleading, and there is an already maybe misguided image of what the military is, or what's cool, the elitism, and all of that. And I'm not interested in promoting that image. They don't tell the story. They only kind of serve as like a highlight reel.
Sure. Those kinds of pictures though are rampant on Instagram, and usually, ironically, I know this because we've talked about it. Only, like, of course, most of them are in like training exercises, which makes it almost more interesting. Because the average person looks, and then you think about it, and you're like, well, nobody would be like taking these photos in the middle of like
there's
combat.
Well, there's combat cameramen and stuff like that, but a lot of what's going on out there.
So it's almost like it's like the Hollywood.
It's Hollywood. It's look at me and it's Hollywood.
But you did put one up yesterday, that kind of a picture, and so why did you choose that picture, and what was the message on your post?
I chose that picture because, well, one, it was used before, actually. Kevin Som used it in his Heads and Tails podcast. And I thought it was a good picture. I don't know, maybe a lot of people were looking at the gun and the uniform. I was looking at my face, and I felt like it told, I feel like it maybe foreshadowed or was telling to the content and the message and the copy that would follow. So I'm not smiling. I'm not enjoying myself. While that was a great day, I wasn't, it's not like this celebration type photo. And only promoting or only talking about the celebrations and the kind of cool guy stuff, or that type of Hollywoodism, fails to address a serious issue that certainly the veteran community faces, but also non-veterans alike.
Sure, and not to, but like, yeah. So personally, what you posted about your struggle since leaving the military. And I think what I'm trying to just avoid it being, because I think that's part of the problem with this topic, is like, it's kind of like a very neat and packaged like issue, like the transition, like veterans and transition, and it's like a catchphrase, and it's very easy to have it be, like it's just very removed. Oh yeah, that's like an issue, I know. Yeah, people say, look out of the military, that's hard. Yeah. It's very different when it's someone you know, and then you see some of the real specifics that you outline in that post of like what that really means to struggle.
Yeah.
I think what was interesting about that as well is we've talked about it, that picture probably did grab people's attention.
Yeah.
One, because of the nature of it, like, oh, cool picture. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like, two, you don't usually post those.
Right.
So it was definitely like, what's going on here? But so you decided to share about your struggles. You had the do lecture and you put that out there, but that was more, I see that as like a little less specific. It was more just about like certainly personal struggles, but this post was like very specific about what the actual struggle looks like. And so what is that?
Wow. What is it? Some days it's like everything, and other days it's nothing. And I think that up and down and roller coaster type frequency and just cycle of it is yeah, it's really hard. It's paralyzing at times, and it can become super dark.
So, I mean, I know a lot of people listening obviously aren't veterans, and you were talking about this, but it's certainly the military, because there's these two worlds. I think for you, like, you lived in this one world.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting is, and I was talking to somebody about this morning who mentioned your post. One of the things that was specific to your situation was you didn't have a family living on base or in town with you. So it wasn't like you went to work, you came home, and you had some other kind of mode to shift into.
Right.
Because I lived here and we lived here, you were kind of in that mode unless I came down there for a weekend.
Yeah.
So then when you leave 5 years of being in a mode for you, like, okay, the military, that is the transition. That's the like, okay, now I'm here in a totally different place, in a totally different way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
So the military, I think, it is such a big problem because the cultures are so different in what you're doing. That said, there are people that may experience this. They lose their job. They had a job for 30 years. Yeah. They lose their job, and people are like, oh, that's great. You have time. Like, because I think you've experienced, oh, good. Like, you're home. You must be happy. You get to spend time with the kids. You get to work on your hobbies. And, like, meanwhile, the person's, like, totally paralyzed by the fact that they're unemployed and they have no purpose.
Yeah.
So that's kind of...
That's definitely, yeah. That's, yeah, I mean, that's a huge part of it. And, you know, one of the things, I guess, to be specific about the post, and I'll be honest, I never thought that would be me. Because I went into the military after a very successful college career as a student athlete. Mm-hmm. I worked hard enough to get a, you know, quote unquote, good, high paying job right out of college with PricewaterhouseCoopers, and, you know, that whole trajectory was there. So I had like seen enough, mm-hmm. you know, and it was a total judgment on my part of others who came from high school. Mm-hmm. 2 weeks later, they're standing in formation.
That's all they knew.
That's all they knew. And so, like, from a programming standpoint, yeah, when you think about where you were at 18, mm-hmm. and then where you're going to be at 30,
right?
If the majority of your conscious life, where you're forming memories, is in the military, yeah, like, you don't know much else. Right. Like, there's a funny thing kind of in the military, and you see it with people, even, you know, in all units, where people, like, have to wear real person clothes, mm-hmm. and it's like, wow, what did you like? They even like business casual. I had to brief my team, you know, because I had that experience one time, and
it's just a different world.
It's a different world, and so there's so many things you just don't know. You're not experienced to, and likewise, if you were to pluck somebody off the street and be like, hey, you know, do a right face or about face or this,
right,
they'd be like, what are you talking about? And so that's.
But that was something, as when we were looking at ahead of like what was going to come after the military. That was something. Yeah, there was a confidence there, like,
without a doubt.
We had talked about that, like, yeah. Well, I think it'll be fine because of all these things.
Yeah, I had a list of things. I have college education, mm-hmm. and 4 years after high school that I lived sort of, you know, not completely on my own, because I don't think a college kid is completely on their own, but like, mm-hmm. I had seen some things, I had, you know, experienced some things. I lived, worked at a normal job, mm-hmm. where I had like, normal job stuff, you know, career, not just job kind of deal. I lived in a different state on my own.
Sure.
So I had all of that, and I was like, yeah, I've seen enough, or I know enough to know, like, I've got some separation between the brainwashing.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I thought I had a high degree of confidence that the perceived brainwashing, and I don't mean that in like a super negative, Orwellian way, but there's I mean, you become, the word is failing me. You become institutionalized.
Right. Right.
And you need to. Like, you need to.
That makes me think about, it's like such a great example. And it's an extreme, of course. But in the prison movie, where he digs his way out.
Yeah.
With, what's it called? Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
When the guy
Andy.
gets released. Not Andy,
yeah,
but the old guy.
The old guy.
And he ends up, ending his life because he doesn't know how to live outside of the institution. And that kind of culture thing, and I'm not likening the military to a high security prison, but there's definitely a culture change between that and the quote unquote real world.
Yeah.
So we were just talking about, like, you got out 3 years ago.
4
years ago.
4 years. I went on terminal leave 4 years ago to the day today.
So what have you, and the other day, to be candid, you said, like, I think you asked me if there's anything, like, lately you've been struggling more, I feel like. I mean, when you first got out, there was definitely some struggle to be expected.
Yeah.
Should I go back?
When I first got out, I was pretty certain I was going to go back in.
Right.
In a not in an active duty capacity, but in both the National Guard and OGA stuff.
Then you kind of moved past that. I'm like, okay, I'm going to give this life a shot.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of like, lately, I think there's been some struggle. So whether it is, but the other day you did say, wow, like, what have I done? Like, what have I accomplished in 4 years?
Yeah.
And I think that's where, to have one, even though you were quote unquote only in for 5 years, your pursuit of that was a long time. It wasn't like you decided a year before you went into the military, I think I'll try this. It had been
I knew it at a young age.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, like, now you're completed that is done, the box has been checked.
Yeah.
What it remains, like, in the wake, I think that's been the challenge. And so that's one thing right now. Like, what are you doing? What are you going to do with your life?
Yeah. And so when I first got out, I was, like I said, fairly certain that I would go back in. Mm-hmm. I actually, just because of the way the dates worked, was gonna like immediately re-enlist into the Guard before I even got out, and have that as like a thing. But whatever. Anyway, I talked about that on the Do lecture, with want to go back, or looking to go back. There's some other people that I was talking to with other organizations that I didn't talk about and won't talk about. But that door was very much open, and there was a pretty nice invitation to walk back through it. So I always thought, like, all right, yeah, I'll kind of let the honeymoon go, enjoy the honeymoon, and then when it's like, okay, hey, check it out, like, I'm gonna go back and do this, and maybe it would be a
right. The failure point of that is kind of like, which I think we did discuss, was, okay, if you're gonna go do that, then what was kind of the point of getting out? Because
that was
then you might
that was huge, yeah. And I think I could rationalize that and answer that in many different ways. The lie I was convinced of and trying to get you on board with too was, like, it would be the best of both worlds. I'd be there, I'd be here.
Right.
And
but
like,
we know that
it was not like, but it also, like, I know me, and that's probably, I'm going to be there much more than I'm going to be here. Right. And even when I'm here, I'm probably not going to be here. So so that was that. And then, so then I guess I kind of pursued the level 1 staff. as a thing. Like, obviously the gym has been woven throughout for many
but
years.
The gym, I will say, I think the challenge with that, and there's probably people that read that or are listening that are like, really? Like I asked you about someone today and you're like, wow, I don't know, on Instagram they seem like things are good. And it wasn't in like a flippant way, it was just like, and it's funny, there's probably people like, really? Like that you're struggling because things look pretty good. Like, well, you have the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, sure, there's the gym, and it is ours, and your influence when you came back and things that you helped with and, like, changed and impacted have now, like, transformed the gym and part of, like, it being a transformed place. But it's still not yours. Like, you didn't create it. Like, I feel like that was sort of like you wanted to take it on as, like, fulfilling that
The
purpose.
only reason I'm in
not...
an ownership capacity is because I am married to you.
Right, but I'm saying, like, you had a role in it, and certainly we did things together in the gym. But what we realized, not after it didn't take that long, like, it's not really enough for you. That's not what's getting you up in the morning. Like, you love the gym and the people there, and it's an amazing place. But
I actually had that in the post when I was saying that I thought having you know, beautiful wife, 2 amazing stepkids, family close by, and a place of support and passion. But I actually left it out intentionally because I didn't feel like it was.
Yeah, but the point being, like, okay, that was our plan. Our plan, which I think is interesting, as we know, we try to make this podcast, like, not just through our personal scenarios, just trying to make that a connection for people with what they're dealing with. So one of the things that I think we've talked about a lot, like, there's always a plan. The problem is when the plan might not work. So that was the plan. The plan was you would get out, we'd be really happy, like, great, you're home. Mm-hmm. And we would appreciate things like sitting on a couch having coffee. Like, we wrote about that, like, wow, that's going to be amazing. We can do that every day. You're going to help with the gym. Everything's going to be great.
Yeah.
And then what happened was, like, you felt like that wasn't fulfilling enough. It wasn't filling a certain void. No. So you had thought about going back in, and I did say to you, I do think at that point, like, what's challenging is when you were still in, and I know this has been out there, it's been posted or talked about in different platforms, but, like, I wouldn't say I told you, like, you have to get out. That's not what I would say. I think what becomes challenging is us living in 2 places, it not being realistic for me to live down there with the kids, and, like, that just wasn't happening. Right. I kind of put my hand in the air and said, like, for what I feel like for us to continue, for us to have a life, it can't be like this. Yeah. And so the decision then you had to make was really me or the military. And so I did present that decision. I didn't say, don't worry, don't make a decision. I'm just going to kind of live here and come visit you. And I didn't say that. No. But that was the decision. And so then when you wanted to go back in, saying, like, okay, I will support you in this sort of be here, be there kind of scenario. But at the time you had been, and you've talked about this in your origin story, like, developing the idea between the ears. Yes. And so it was kind of like, you can't dabble. If you want to try a business, try your hand at this. It is about service. It is about helping people. There's a huge part of, like, okay, at that point you'd been struggling. It's like having something that eventually could be something to help other people transition. You kind of need to give it a try. You need to decide if you want to give it a real shot, and you can't do it as a hobby. Right. So that's kind of where you started. I think, decided to, like, pursue between the ears as your next step career. Yeah. For sure. And how's that been going? It's been hard. It's been a challenge. I mean, I say this all the time. I don't, and I'll say this, whatever. I don't think I'm an entrepreneur.
And I think that that's something that, like,
you don't identify
I don't
as
identify as an entrepreneur. There's starting your own business and there's being an entrepreneur.
Okay. What do you see the difference? Why do you think you're not an entrepreneur?
I think that the identity, the archetype, the character set that you assume and wear and like flourish under of being an entrepreneur is much different than starting a business and trying to grow it.
Okay. Do you think so? A lot of that comes down to, like, I never did well with like working for somebody.
No.
No.
Say it ain't so.
So.
God, I remember thinking just real quick, like, I would love to see you in the military for one day. Just cannibal.
I don't think I'd make it a day.
How would you make it to breakfast? Is the question.
I think I would do breakfast.
Good breakfast.
Breakfast is good.
Good breakfast.
Then from there it's downhill.
Yeah.
But a lot of being an entrepreneur, I think there's a couple of things. One is managing yourself, your time, managing the doubts, managing the masses, all that stuff. And I think one of the things for you have a history of, and you're by yourself. I was never a team athlete. Definitely not a team athlete. I am an individual athlete. So I feel like I do identify with the entrepreneurial thing. Mm-hmm. You have been part of a team for as long as you can remember. You also have been part of an organization. So then when you start to pursue something that has none of that, that's all about just an individual, that has no structure, nothing, I think that is a huge leap. I don't think it means you're not an entrepreneur. I think it's not a natural fit for what you're used to.
Yes. I think the requirements to be a successful entrepreneur, I don't know, maybe that's like an overgeneralization. I think I have some of what is required to be a successful entrepreneur. Resiliency, grit, work ethic, belief, even though I have serious doubts as well. It's almost like I've said, I think we talked about it here, but like I need to almost be like, okay, risk of life now to show up.
Right, it has to be really severe.
And so I think that, any entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur will say, like, you're going to have these very challenging moments. You're going to have doubts. You're going to have, like, you're not going to be a first time go and have everything be.
But you got to keep going.
But you got to keep going. Yeah. And I think that my track record is such that I'm good at that. I think the issue is, like, I'm really good at it too, though, when there's a little bit of a carrot, like when I'm not holding the stick in the carrot, and to have, I think there's a certain amount of, like, okay, so I'm an introvert. I would classify myself as an introvert. I don't have that, like, networking type, extroverted social butterfly type of a thing that I think is probably helpful for that entrepreneurial spirit. I certainly am analytical, and sometimes
which can work against you.
Yeah, which can definitely work against me. So anyway, as it relates to between the ears, those are some challenges that I certainly face, and it's up to me to decide everything. You obviously help and are a sounding board.
But I'm also your wife.
But you're also my wife. And that bleed over has been something that we've experienced as a serious challenge. Yeah. Because I would like you to continue to be my wife and, like, do husband-wife things, not business partner, consultant, like, hey, would you take a look at this? Like, you're not an editor.
So one of the things, like, when people get out of the military, or for you, like, there was an option potentially to just go back to the corporate sector. And so now I feel like you're in a position where, like, so some of the struggle is, like, you had a purpose. Yeah. And it feels on some days like it's gone. Now, it's kind of as we've talked about, like I said, it was kind of like a cat, like a card. What's that called?
House of Cards.
Yeah, like a house of cards or the domino effect. Like the problem is that there's not like this isolated thing. So on some days it's like, yes, of course, between the ears you do feel a great sense of purpose with that, and I know, and you know, that there's a ton of value and potential there. Potential to help people that are currently being helped, potential to be on different platforms, eventually potential to maybe help veterans. Like there's a lot of that service and purpose.
Yeah.
But on days where there's a lot of doubt, and to your point, like the only person that you're relying on is yourself, that is like as you say, a self-licking ice cream cone. Like,
right.
Because there's nobody else to like pull you up or keep you kind of moving. If you're struggling, then the whole thing is going down. And that is where then it kind of goes back to this back to the like where you were, where you've been, and like the comparison, sort of like, look at where I am now, what have I done, and there's this very challenging like, how do you go forward?
Yeah, and that's that's definitely hard to. It's hard to look at because part of me, when people reach out, and people do reach out and say how Between Years has changed their life and the lives of others around them that I don't even know. That's the point of it all. And I don't even know half that stuff.
Well, that's the people that are actually sending a message.
Right. But I don't know the people who have been impacted by the people who have been impacted.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. Part of the challenge is when I am facing doubt, facing struggle, facing challenge, like just feeling like I'm slamming my head against the wall. I feel like I'm discounting, dismissing, and diminishing and minimizing those people who are on board, who are bought in, who are experiencing it, and that's the last thing I want to do.
Sure. The problem, I think, is, or the not the problem, but if 6 months ago you got some hookup with some corporate speaking engagement and it was like a tremendous success, and then that company onboarded you to do like basically self-development, mindset work with their company and put you on a contract.
Right.
I don't know that you'd have as many doubts. Now, one,
right.
you would be, I'm not going to say the word. Actually, my dad called me out on using the word busy today, so.
Okay,
I didn't mean it like that.
Okay.
Anyway, I was like, I don't think you need to read the thing again. But like you would have structure in your day. You would have things to do. You would have you would have commitments.
Yep.
There would be this, like responsibility to, I'm working with this company, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
No.
That hasn't happened yet.
Right.
There is the potential for that.
Sure.
I certainly think so. But in the absence of something like that, I think the question is always like, is this enough? Is this going to grow? Where is this going? And the fear of, like, as you've said, okay, what if in 3 years from now I haven't gotten and I use the corporate thing as an example because there's some stability in that. There's some consistency in that. What if that doesn't happen, and then what? And and then the question becomes, and the loop becomes, okay, then in the stability world, is that just abandoning everything between the ears and just signing up for a regular job?
Right, and that feels like giving up on the people who currently are in and experiencing good stuff, and giving up on the people who might need it.
Yeah.
Because
right.
And I am compelled to serve. And that's part of, like, I've always been part of something that has represented something bigger than myself, and something that I also believe in, and so
right. So it's this loop. It's this very complex situation. But I not unrelated, but that's when we look at this stuff though, and like, okay, so you want to do something that really makes a difference. To sound cliche, but like something that really could make a difference. It could be life or death with somebody. It could impact their whole family. It's really, you have a gift of working with people, of ultimately the people just want to wake up in the morning and like enjoy their life, want to be here on this planet. Okay, and that's very simply like kind of what you help people work towards. I mean, really.
Yeah, I mean, I want people to take an aggressive first step getting out of bed, not just roll out of bed.
Right. But the reason that there are less people, that's not, well, I'll use the word normal.
What?
Like wanting to, the people of the world that go out and are like, I'm going to make a change. Mm-hmm. The John David who photographed you is doing a series on like people that are trying to make a change in the world. Yeah. That's why you were part of that.
Yeah.
And he pointed out that some of the people in that he's shooting, like they haven't earned the Nobel Peace Prize yet, but they're doing stuff that they're trying. Mm-hmm. Most people, and this isn't a judgment, most people have a corporate job. They might sell something. They might be part of the pharmaceutical industry, the finance industry, and IT. And that's not about, it's not about being better or anything. It's just the reality of like running your own business, number one, and number two, doing something that's like really service-based and is just like purpose-driven. It is it is hard. That is why it's not the norm. Most people aren't going out. If you go to a party, most people there aren't entrepreneurs who are trying to do something that is against the grain, changing the world.
No. And that's definitely not a judgment, and I know you don't mean it as that. Because with, a safe and secure, quote unquote, job, you get structure, you get stability, and you get you have the opportunity to provide for your family mm-hmm. in a way that is meaningful and valuable to your situation, and that's
sure. And I just mean it by
amazing.
That's why it is hard to. It's like, okay, check. Like, yes, everyone would agree. I agree. You agree. Like, what you're trying to do is definitely challenging. Yeah. Now couple that with the challenges of having left. Like, I started my own business, but I wasn't coming from this like place where I wasn't in a challenge. I was like motivated to do that. Right. I wasn't dealing with what I used to do or where am I finding myself. It was kind of a natural process. Yeah. So while that was still challenging, I didn't have this extra piece, which you do. Yeah,
I feel like 4 years ago, I was born again, and I had to start a new life. And I am 4 years old, and I'm actually 34 years old. Mm-hmm. And where do you start? And how can you not look back? And, I don't know. I'm not even going to go down that road of like reincarnation and stuff, but you don't wipe like the system clean mm-hmm. and just start over. And so, we carry with us our experiences from our past, and hopefully we learn from them. And, that's kind of the magical adventure of life, but damn, it's definitely tough. And so, part of, I think, between the ears and what I'm trying to do is to reach the people who want to make a change. Mm-hmm. They want to make a change, and they believe in better. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they need to make a change and mm-hmm. that they're in worse. Right. Or that they're broken.
And so one of the conflicts or the obvious things is like, okay, well, you're not every day just shouting from the rooftops. Obviously, that's what we're talking about, that like you figured it all out.
No, God, no.
So, but I think whereas someone might say like, well, I mean, you haven't figured out your stuff, like, right. And you're telling, you're presenting opportunities for people to help figure themselves out. I think that's more of a plus. I think anyone who's gonna like say I have it all figured out, I'm not gonna trust them. Number one, I don't struggle. Like, not gonna trust that person. But like even when you look at coaching, and I think that's like we try to bring it back to like fitness because it's an easy like analogy to understand. Like if I'm gonna hire a coach, I do want a coach that has been through like struggles and doubts and challenges and an injury and because then I know that they understand where I'm at. If I'm just dealing with some superhuman who doesn't understand any of those things, then how the hell are they going to coach me? How do they really know what I'm experiencing? So
yeah, I mean, it's called empathy.
Yes.
And so
yes, I wrote a post on that the other day. I'm not sure if you
yes,
read
I did.
But right, so the empathy piece and a lot of what you're putting out there is honestly like some of the stuff that you've created. You know, yeah, that might be why you are still able to, you are still fighting.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that to that point, and I don't know who's making it, I'm sure people have thought it, but like, yeah, if somebody says, hey, I've got it all figured out, I don't, I feel like you haven't figured anything out. And so for me, like, yes, my struggles, and I have validated to the best of my ability things that I believe are helpful. You know, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, I don't just make shit up that I think could work. There's usually always some form of real world experience and application of it. Contained within that is a large freedom of maneuver for individual self-discovery as well. Because you need to, I think that what might have worked for me, it's not the tactic that works necessarily for you, but like the strategy of that. And so that's something that, if this stuff didn't work, I don't know what that would look like. It would probably look a lot different.
I think one of the things that people can really, you know, understand also is like the success, right? So what I said earlier, like if you were quote unquote at this point a success, Between the Ears was a raging success. Like, yeah, that does matter. That does matter.
Social proof?
Yeah, like
powerful.
Not even social proof, but yeah, just right. Like, yeah, that it's working. There's companies hiring me. Like, that's where I think right now it's such a challenge. Like what I was saying, because you're in this like sticky point where you don't have the social proof. No. Now, the problem becomes more complicated when it's like, well, okay, why? If you And this is where like we haven't really talked about this, we skirt around it, but like it doesn't, it's not about, and this is what we try to tell the kids, like not that they're on social media yet, but we all know as a society like social media is bullshit, but yet it's what a lot is built on.
It's like saying this. It's like saying the stock market or the banking industry or the finance industry is bullshit too. Like, and I'm not a political person, so I'm not going to get into that. But people that want to like get rid of money, you're out of your mind. Like, you can't do that. It's the infrastructure by which we communicate and engage with many people.
Sure. So the problem becomes like if you had some quote unquote more celebrity status, and parlayed, and now you release Between the Ears, it's still the same stuff, but it's going to grow faster. The success is going to be quicker.
I think it's and I've certainly fallen into the trap of being like, well, it's only a function of more people not knowing. And so, you know, like just more people need to know about it. And I think that looking at the absolute number of potential reach and all that stuff is not where it is all at. My thing is like, I don't care about how many total people or, celebrities or any of that stuff. I care about how many people are actually going to like engage with it and interact with it. And I care about the right people finding it at the right time. And
sure, but there does need to be like this the projection is like for you to feel like there's purpose, like okay, should I continue to pursue this? Like if in 5 years, like should I continue to pursue this is the question, because you can't keep feeling like you're unemployed or you're not sure what to do, or like in this liminal space of like, am I going forward or backwards, or what am I making a difference? Is this doing something? And that is predicated on, yes, there is a reflection of like if 5 people sign up or 500 people sign up, that does make a difference.
Of course.
But what I'm saying is, sure, right, so, but what's challenging is the 5 or 500 people, yes, it does have to do with reach, and reach does have to do with some of the like numbers and how things are structured with how many people see your stuff.
Yep.
And unfortunately, that is just based off of, what's sad is that is such a fragile platform, not based off of merit or always value or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the image thing, and it's
I mean, that was when you were at the Do, so whatever month that was, June, July, right? And I applied to be a trainer for The Biggest Loser.
Yeah.
And like, there's a lot of doubt I have about a lot of things. I don't have a single shred of doubt that I would have been an incredible, like if the point of that show is to change people's lives, and like they need, or the potential is there, and they need people that are gonna like help these people physically, emotionally, have a ton of variety and understanding of nutrition, all this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm that person.
Yeah.
Now, why didn't I when I realized who got it?
Yeah.
I have 3,000 followers.
Mm-hmm.
I trained one of the Fujis. I think that's the top of the food chain of celebrities that I've ever trained.
Mm-hmm.
The people that got the job, millions of followers.
Yeah, of course.
And maybe they're also super knowledgeable. I don't know.
Sure, probably.
But the point is, like, that frustration continues to be like, it's not about, unfortunately, some of the current like getting yourself out there is limited by things that aren't about your value, that aren't about whether your purpose is good, whether people need it or not. So that's kind of, well, it's easy to say like, well, I recognize that it's not just about that. That has been a huge stumbling block, because
it's obviously a challenge.
There's people that find it valuable. There is a tremendous value. It is an incredible program. It's not every other mindset BS that's out there, but continuing down that path of like getting exposure, getting people to try it, like that's where it takes time, and you have struggled because of.
I understand conceptually that in order to grow a business, time is required, and that the overnight success is not one. It's not an effective course of action, nor would I think like. So I get it. It takes time. The continuing to look at yourself and wonder, am I making progress? Is time is your worst enemy in that regard.
Sure.
And so the longer time goes by, while you can kind of drip away and fill the cup, you're still wondering like, holy shit, like I'm really thirsty right now.
Right.
And that cup, that's like, no, not happening. So yeah, that's definitely part of it. And then when you then think, and we were talking about it last night, because I was, throwing things out there, and I've considered going like applying for jobs, and like what the hell would I do?
Well, right, to be honest, like that's what is kind of really messed up about the system of.
I just think that like if I'm not going to walk into a company and say, hey, I'm just wondering, are there any jobs available? for someone. I deployed to an undisclosed location in the Middle East on a highly sensitive covert action mission that you've never heard of. Do you think you have room for me? I've jumped out of airplanes in the middle of the night with stuff applied. I've blown stuff up. I've shot stuff. I've done all this crazy stuff. Talk like, what's the highest risk pressure cooker situation that your company faces? And I want to be in that. Like, I don't think that that's probably, maybe that's bold enough for some crazy guys. I'm just saying, like, it's like, well, what about, and it's like, okay, great, but like, well, what did you, like, how does that relate to like selling software? Or I don't even know what, like, and that's the thing, like, I don't even know. So it is one of those things where I think about, like, am I unemployable? And I was 4 years ago, yeah, I was like a Green Beret, and what the crazy things that we had to be ready for to do on call, like,
right,
now here I am.
Right, that's that world. And what I think is what's sad and very broken about this system is you're relatively young. I mean, 34, okay, there's still time, but you're also past those 10 years of, or like that late 20s, early 30s, that crucial time of like where people kind of don't have a family yet, maybe they're building their professional, like you've missed that. So now, and what I'm saying this as like a whole population of people, which is why the transition, and I hate just using that word because it's so like inhuman, is so hard because it's like, well, so you are this elite role capable of all these things, and what that feels like for someone to just then go, yes, to like an unemployable level, and like, you know, well, do you have this or that experience?
Yeah, I feel like
it's
I
like
feel
insane.
like I feel like, and I know I'm definitely not alone in this. If I feel like if there were to be, maybe I should go on interviews just to see, and I don't know, but like if someone were to ask me like, okay, well, do you have this or no? Well, what about experience in doing that? Like, no. What about this background? Did you take this class in college? And it's like, no, I didn't. And so there's all of these things where the military tries to have you have some sort of like, look, you've done this and you've done that, and I understand the resume-isms. I get it. Resumes and NCOERs and awards in the military and reviews and stuff like that are the same thing. You stood around, didn't do anything, and put it on paper with some nice adjectives and some good verbs, and it's like, wow, this person's a hero. So like, I understand that. I know how that works. But a very real challenge is thinking, what the fuck am I gonna do, and what can I do? And the whole thing, like,
with how will you, because it is important to feel like you're supporting your family.
Without a doubt.
So then
and
that
so,
is another blow to feel like, wow, I'm not even supporting my family.
Yeah, and like that's the, you know, I guess when I think about it too, like, and this is just kind of me personally, but yeah, like you know, I wouldn't, like, when I was down at Campbell, I moved into a back room of a teammate's house, and it was not a great situation, so that I could save every dollar and not like send it back here, but like so that this, like, right, so like I prioritized that, and I would do anything for this family. And it's like, where's the line between wanting to try to start this new life and find this new purpose and grow this purpose and be personally fulfilled too, seeking to serve people I want to serve and, you know, live passionately, and supporting the family. Sure, and so with every day that goes by that I'm not, and it's not just about money, it's not just about how many speaking gigs or how many clients or this or that, but it's like, I think to myself, like, yeah, in 5 to 10 years from now, what's it gonna look like? And you know, I've never been good at that. Like, I've never been good at the whole wake up in 5 years from now. I can't. I don't. So
yeah, and I think what becomes also an additional challenge in that is like you want to be supporting your family, be here for them when you're struggling with all this stuff. That's not happening either from an emotional side, because if you're struggling, the rest of the family does feel that.
Yeah, for sure.
So what does that mean for tomorrow?
For tomorrow?
Yeah.
Man, what about today? I'm not really sure. I think one of the things that I do know, though, I guess I should say this before saying that. Maybe I should have said this in the beginning. I did not intend for that post to be a cry for help. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that saying, get out of here, I don't need your help. Because
you do.
Because I do.
Yeah.
And yesterday was a very hard day, but it was not the hardest day of my life. Mm-hmm. It was not the darkest day of my life either. It was very hard. But it wasn't like, oh sure. Shit. Like,
but I think it's evidenced by like, if you were having the darkest day of your life, you don't have the capacity or awareness to write a post like that. You're just trying to
no.
Stay
That's
with your
not,
head above water.
Yeah. That's not happening. And so the intention of writing that post was, sure, personal, and I think that I want people to know that like what you see is not what you think all the time. I also want to serve the veteran, the active duty, the transitioning population of people getting out of a very different world, be that primarily military, maybe some police and firefighters as well, but like I'm going to stay in my lane and say, generally speaking, it's going to be the military. Yeah. And I think in order to do that, there's a certain amount of trust and experience that needs to be there. And I think that if I want to serve that demographic, then what is required is to stand up, raise my hand, clear my throat, and say, check it out, here's the deal. Like, this is what I got going on. Or, and I think about, like, the thing that really actually drives me, I think about all that I do have and all that I did have, like, rewind, whatever, 5-6 years ago. What about the people who don't have that? Like, that is what keeps me up at night. The fact that there are people out there who aren't nearly as blessed. Doesn't mean I'm better than them or they're worse or whatever, but like, if I've got it all, essentially, like, and I do, and I have families to build, sure. like I have a lot of so much, too. And I'm like, I'm not immune to that shit. I'm not invincible to it. What about people that don't have that?
Sure.
And that haunts me. It haunts me to feel like I'm on the fucking sidelines, not doing anything. And like that does keep me up at night. And so that is also what does drive me and compel me. And it's like, writing that post was not comfortable. It wasn't comfortable to write it personally. It sure as shit wasn't comfortable to share it over social media, something that I have a tenuous relationship with anyway, and understand there's some serious pitfalls and issues with. So, it wasn't comfortable at all, but like, am I really going to be that selfish and prioritize my own comfort at the expense of taking a stake or claiming a stake in it and saying, hey, I am willing to step up and contribute to the solution, a solution, something. Because waving your little flags and making the $25 a year donations doesn't do anything.
So the thing though for you, because that community, as it seems obvious, and I'm not suggesting this is about finances. However, people do need to make a living. You need to earn money to support, to contribute to us having a home and food.
Yeah.
And much like people who I guess are in philanthropy and like, you know, if they're being charitable, like the veteran community, that's not a place where like people they're in the exact position of not having resources, financial resources.
Yes.
To pay for that. It's not like, great, like I need a transition coach, and that's $5,000. Like that's not happening. That doesn't work.
No.
So
somebody transitioning out of the military also, you know, people are like, oh, you retired. No, I didn't retire. Okay, the only people that retire have been in for an entire lifetime. And are they the people I'm seeing? I mean, they can be. Like, there's one guy I talk with, you know, and whatever. But like somebody who's been in for 12 years and because whatever happens, now they're out.
Right, they
gets
retire.
Nothing. Yeah. No. Gets zero. No, like there's no pension.
Right.
There's no, you earned there's nothing.
Yes.
You're on your own. So
that being said, the point is to get to an end state of, not to say you don't want to help all the other non-military people on the way, because that's what you do. That's currently what Between the Ears is.
Yeah.
But like, basically, to help the veteran community to get to that stage, like, yes, you have to build Between the Ears, and there has to be an exchange of money there, and that has to be built so you can get to the place where you can kind of quote unquote donate your time or be able to support that purpose. Mm-hmm. Your challenge lately has been saying, okay, well, if that's there's some financial constraints, if I just get a job and then I can do this on the side. That is probably the end of anything Between the Ears, and I've been honest with you about that.
Yeah.
That is the hobby thing on the side is a trap. So I do think like that's part of the challenge is, you know, having that purpose, having that fortitude, and hoping that part of my belief system where I think I try to provide where maybe you don't have it is like, just putting it out there, continuing to put it out there. You know, as you said, like networking, I don't even mean networking, but you just don't know, and continuing to share your story, even like, okay, this podcast, like sharing it.
Yeah. Because
people don't know. They don't know. They make assumptions. People on Instagram could be thinking like, wow, Between the Ears is just, I mean, it looks great. That's also part of what you try to project is like our best of, you're trying to make it desirable, which it is. But yeah, there could be people listening. They're like, wow, well, I didn't even realize you did corporate things. Like I do think there could be some value in like hearing you give the talk you did at the Do, or talking about challenges, or talking about adversity, or talking about mindset. Like that is part of the process. Is you can't, as an entrepreneur, building something like this, also that's kind of a one-man show right now, you have to open up and put it all out there. And so that work is hard, but that's what does have to happen to get to, one, the purpose of Between the Ears and building that, but two, like your own fulfillment, your own purpose.
Yeah.
And abandoning. Why do you keep looking at that?
Because it's going to shut off anytime, so I want to make sure I re-record.
So abandoning that, and I'm not saying it's the wrong thing if you decide to pursue a corporate job, but then that's like shutting that dot down, and it's not very realistic that that's going to come to fruition.
Right. I can certainly understand that. Let me just turn this off real quick. Yeah. And one of the things with it has been like, okay, yeah, if I get another job, then at least I can alleviate some pressure so that I can like volunteer my time or services or whatever. And like, yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you.
So I think tomorrow looks like for you what we've talked about after yesterday. Giving yourself, and I think this is maybe a helpful thing for other people. Like, one, there's a ton of value in. It's hard being your own coach.
It's impossible, yes. I think.
However, there are some things, ironically, in me talking to you that I just give you back the things that you created. Like, my advice to you is like, hey, maybe you should go back and re-listen to your own podcast about like, consider all things are possible. Mm-hmm. Like suspending belief. So some of it's looking at like, okay, if you could believe that all things are possible for this time, I'm going to give it this much time to pursue this. And knowing that there are going to be some downs again. Yesterday was not the last hard day you're going to have.
No.
But trying to, remind yourself about the things you have and the opportunities and what your purpose is. And I think that's been something, as you said, always being part of a higher purpose, a bigger mission, a bigger organization. And that has to remain, that's hard. That leaders are few and far between. And that's what you're doing. And so you have to continue through your own adversity and
right. And part of that, and part of that post, and part of I think what continuing to do stuff looks like is to highlight that, and is to show that, and is to demonstrate and like live the ethos. Because like I've had a fair amount of leadership experience across a pretty dynamic range of things, and it is hard. Like it's not easy. And so leading yourself, when you add to that, mm-hmm. is super challenging. Yeah. And so for me, some of that stuff is also looking at like doing my best to self-administer, mm-hmm. which I certainly have been, but also being like, to think that somebody is going to do between the ears and be cured or superpower. Sure,
it's not a cure.
It's not.
There's no cure out there.
And so, no, of course not. And so, with that understanding that there is no answer, mm-hmm. other than you have to ask yourself and seek to find it. Sure. So
there's no answer. There's just really seeking for yourself.
Yeah. And so that's kind of what that looks like. And so for a continuation of my own journey, like, driving without the brakes on has been the analogy, mm-hmm. we've used. So that's kind of what it looks like. And I asked myself that, like, well, okay, yeah, like I can visualize that, but like, what is the e-brake in my life, mm-hmm. that I have cranked up? And I at this point, like, I'm not really sure. I think part of it is saying that, like, hey, I fucking know what I'm talking about, while I don't know everything by any means, and that's the first thing I'll tell everyone. But the stuff how I do think, and my experiences and struggles and successes, like, if you are willing to show up and do the work, mm-hmm. it can change your life. Yeah. And like, that's a tough thing to say, honestly, because of course the internal critic and that whole bit, so yeah, I guess that's kind of what it is, and continuing to message that, and hopefully that's something that I can do well in a way that's not dogmatic, in a way that doesn't talk down to people, mm-hmm. or posit that I'm some sort of elite type thing, but done with empathy and connection in this kind of shared pursuit. So yeah.
Well, I'm really glad that I was coaching when you posted that. And I was really happy to see that you put yourself out there. And I do know you're not your tenuous, as you said, relationship with Instagram, but I think this is kind of what is a good step for you. And I know a lot of people listening that would think, oh my God, I sure hope he doesn't stop between the ears. So that is something to focus on for sure.
Yeah. February 8th,
yeah,
2020 will be the first Between the Ears seminar.
Very good. It's exciting.
January 3rd, I believe.
Is the new practice?
Is the new practice.
Mm-hmm.
Is the group tribe.
Yeah.
Which has been, we're 5 weeks in now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's been really neat to get some feedback and some anecdotes on like the real life change that's happening. Not like, oh, I feel better, like, and that's great, and we need to feel better, but like, no, like my relationship with my wife has significantly improved better, or I'm not an asshole at work, or I got tasked with this, like those kinds of things are really pretty cool. So that's in January, which will be neat. But yeah, the seminar, I'm excited about that. I'm planning that, and it's gonna be, I mean, it's gonna blow some minds.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah. So all right. That's it. What else? Anything else?
Nope.
Do you not have anything else?
Me?
Yeah.
Related to this?
Yeah, I thought you were gonna say something else. I thought there was something you were looking at me thinking you were gonna talk about it later. No. I guess not.
Nope.
All right. Well, that's it. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay.
Touch ID.
Was there something you wanted me to say that